Hello everybody, welcome back. My name is Mukesh Sharma and we are going to continue what we were studying in the last few lectures, that is ancient criticism. And today the critic that we are going to study is going to be Longinus. Longinus was a Greek critic, and as you remember, we studied two Greek critics first of all, and then we moved to a Roman critic, that was Horace, and now we are again moving to a Greek critic which is named Longinus. Now Longinus is, in many terms or in many ways can be the first romantic critic, and we are going to see that. Without wasting any time, we move straight to the first slide. Now, Longinus is primarily known for his seminal work named On the Sublime. Okay, On the Sublime is the name of the work, and although it seems very simple, but yet it is asked in the exam, especially in NET, simply what is the other name, or what other name the work On the Sublime is known. So you must know it is known as Longinus on the Sublime as well. Now, there is one more thing I would like to add before we continue it. I have changed the way I taught in the 3 or 4 videos that I made earlier. I have tried to put down the facts in the form of bullets so that it becomes easier for you to understand. So here we go. Now, we have found a few manuscripts of the work On the Sublime, and the primary of them is Paris manuscript, and I hope you all know what a manuscript is. Now, there is a confusion regarding his name, and there are some critics who go on to the extent of saying that there was no person such as Longinus who wrote the work On the Sublime. But when we see the Paris manuscript of the work, it mentions his name as either Dionysius or Longinus, or at one place his name is also written as Dionysius Longinus. So in many places, in many books, Longinus' full name is given Dionysius Longinus. So but the Longinus is the easier one, so we will keep that in mind. Now, moving ahead, in spite of all the uncertainty that lingers on his name, he is more commonly known. The work is more commonly known as Longinus on the Sublime, and it is written in Greek. As I have already told you, he is a Greek critic, and like the work we studied yesterday, or the day before yesterday, Horace's Ars Poetica, it is also addressed to some posthumous Terentianus. Okay, these names are very typical and very difficult to pronounce, for me at least, because they are not English. Almost 1/3 of the work is missing. So, like poetics, we have to deal with the work which is not fully available to us. And the central argument of the book is rhetoric. Central theme of the book is rhetoric, actually. I will have to change it. But the central argument is, what is it that makes a work sublime in literature? Sublime is something, great. It is equal to great. So what is it, or what are the qualities of a work that make a work of art or literature here great? We are going to have a look at them. So what is sublimity in literature? We are going to discuss each point. The function of literature before Longinus was either to instruct, as we saw in Plato, or to delight, as we saw in Aristotle. Although Aristotle also said that the primary function of a work should be to delight. If it teaches, it is good, but primary function is delight. But Longinus considers that these two functions of literature, that is to instruct or teach or delight, lack something, means that there is something more to them, or there is something more to literature that is fascinating. He says that a great work of literature certainly does these things, means it can instruct, it can delight, but there is something else which makes the works of literature that are great actually. So according to him, it was their sublimity, means there was a kind of sublimity in those works that made them great, and not because they instructed or they delighted people, that they became or they called to be great. They were called to be great. What does he have to? What does he say on sublimity? He says that it is a certain distinction and consummate excellence in expression, and it is from this and no other source that the greatest poets and prose writers have gained their eminence and immortal fame. Means it is a kind of distinction and consummate excellence. Means something. If you are going to read a work of literature that is great, that is sublime, you will find a kind of excellence of expression in that particular work. मीन्स उसका जो एक्सप्रेशन है इतना ग्रेट होगा, इतना डिफरेंट होगा, उसमें इतनी एक्सीलेंस होगी कि आपको पढ़ते ही ऐसा लगेगा कि यू आर ऑटोमेटिकली ट्रांसपोर्टिंग टू दैट पर्टिकुलर वर्क्स वर्ल्ड. वो वर्क जो वर्ल्ड क्रिएट करता है, उस वर्ल्ड में आप ट्रांसपोर्ट हो जाते हैं. ये क्वालिटी एक वर्क में होती है जो सबलाइम होता है. And he further says that any sublime work of art of literature has this quality that it transports a reader into the world portrayed in that particular work of art or literature. मीन्स जब हम कोई महान या सबलाइम वर्क पढ़ते हैं तो उसमें एक क्वालिटी है कि हम उस वर्क में खो जाते हैं. यू कैन इवन रियलाइज और यू मस्ट हैव फेल्ट इवन इन द केस ऑफ मूवीज. देयर आर सम मूवीज विच आर सो ग्रेट दैट वी move or we transport into the world portrayed in that particular movie. So this is the quality which is called sublime by Longinus. This sublimity has the capacity to move the reader to ecstasy, okay, which is caused by an irresistible magic of speech. Means the writer or the poet who is writing that particular work has this magic in his speech, has this magical arrangement of words on paper that you automatically, and I can say you have no control over yourself. You are filled with a kind of ecstasy, and you transport to that work. Now he has one more thing to say before we move ahead. He says that if a reader is spellbound by what the writer says, so that he can neither think nor feel except what the writer thinks or feels, the work has the quality of the sublime. So it simply means that for a work to be sublime, it has this quality that it can make a reader feel the same way the writer is feeling. Okay, so he simply can't feel or think anything else than the writer intends him to feel. ओके, सो वी आर मूविंग अहेड. थोड़ा सा हिंदी में बोल देता हूँ कि ऐसा वर्क जो आपको इतना मजबूर कर दे कि आपको सोच ना पाओ उसके अलावा जो राइटर सोच रहा है या राइटर फील कर रहा है. नाउ वी मूव टू द सोर्सेज ऑफ द सबलाइम. मीन्स हाउ सबलिमिटी कैन बी अचीव्ड इन अ वर्क. So Longinus says that natural abilities and training both help in achieving the sublime. There are two sources of sublime. One is natural abilities and another is training. He uses the word art for this training. Okay, art means artistic value or artistic ability, you can say. Okay, so he is against those who believe that sublime can only be achieved by innate abilities of a writer. So he says that those people who believe that sublime or greatness can be achieved by only those who have this capacity built in themselves, or who have this innate capacity in themselves. He says that nature works according to such a system which is brought to light by extensive training. Okay, means yes, it is a good thing that you have some innate capacity for writing, but your capacity of writing, your innate capacity of writing can be enhanced greatly by extensive training. I've already told you he uses the word art for training. Now let's see what he has to say about nature and art, about the innate capacity and training. He says art is perfect when it seems to be nature, and nature hits the mark when she contains art hidden within her. Now, although he gives value to both innate abilities and training, he says that training or artistic ability can only be perfect when it is near to nature. There should not be any artificiality. There should be art, but there shouldn't be artificiality. And nature hits the mark when she contains art within her. Means if an artist is adept at describing or portraying his words using his art or the techniques involving art, the nature will look beautiful many more times. So both have a role to play. आर्ट और इनेट एबिलिटीज दोनों जो हैं वो, आर्ट का मतलब ट्रेनिंग है यहाँ पे ना, मीन्स आप एक्चुअली अच्छे पोइट नहीं थे बट आपने ट्रेनिंग ली और ट्रेनिंग लेके आप पोइट बन गए. आप अच्छे सिंगर नहीं थे, आपने ट्रेनिंग ली और आपने ट्रेनिंग लेके आप सिंगर बन गए. तो ट्रेनिंग की वैल्यू को भी वो क्या कर रहा है, अंडर एस्टिमेट नहीं कर रहा है. जबकि दूसरे जो क्रिटिक्स उससे पहले आए थे, वो बहुत सारे क्रिटिक्स जो है वो ट्रेनिंग की वैल्यू को अंडर एस्टिमेट करते हैं. वो कहते हैं कि सिर्फ इनेट एबिलिटीज जो है एक इंसान की, वही इंसान को एक अच्छा राइटर बनाती हैं. He tells us 5 principal sources of the sublime, and out of those 5, the first 2 are natural, means that these sources are inbuilt in you, they are innate, and the remaining 3 or the last 3 are artistic, or they can be acquired by training. So these sources are grandeur of thoughts, capacity for strong emotion, appropriate use of figures of speech, nobility of diction, and dignity of composition. We are going to see them one by one. Let's have a look. First of all is the grandeur of thought. Means there should be grandeur, greatness, grandness in your thoughts. He says that sublime is nothing but the echo of the greatness of soul. Means if you have a great soul, it will automatically be echoed in your work, whatever work you are producing. And only those who have deep and majestic thoughts can write great works. This is the grandeur of thoughts. Means one has to be innately capable of doing this. Although he contradicts his own words when he says that most of the time this capacity is innate, but they can also be acquired. These qualities of grandeur of thoughts can also be acquired by proper discipline. And how one is going to acquire this discipline? By paying attention to whatever is noble and sublime. Means if one remains in the company of great people or great works or noble works or sublime works continuously and consistently, one can acquire this grandeur of thoughts. So पहली चीज तो ये है कि अगर आपके विचार महान नहीं है तो आप कुछ अच्छा भी नहीं लिख पाओगे. एंड दिस कैपेसिटी, ये कैपेसिटी जो है वो इनेट होती है जनरली, परंतु इसको एक्वायर किया जा सकता है अगर आप लगातार नोबल और सबलाइम लोगों और वर्क्स के टच में रहोगे. तो फर्स्ट वन इज ग्रैंडर ऑफ थॉट विच इज अ नेचुरल एबिलिटी. ये 5 में से कौन सी नेचुरल है और कौन सी आर्टिस्टिक है, ये आपको याद रखना है. ये भी प्रश्न पूछा गया है नेट में. सेकेंड वन इज कैपेसिटी फॉर स्ट्रॉन्ग इमोशन. नाउ see, as far as the second source of sublime is concerned, Longinus proposed to write a second book for describing this second point, which is capacity for strong emotions, but unfortunately we have never found that second book. Okay, so which simply means that we are not going to find much in the work itself, the work which is called Longinus or Sublime. But there are some remarks which are scattered here and there in the book. From them we can have a look at what he meant by capacity for strong emotions. He says that if one has to acquire the grandeur of thoughts, one has to have true emotions, and those true emotions should be put in right place, because these true emotions, when they are put in the right place, inspire the words and fill them with a kind of divine frenzy. Remember divine frenzy from Plato, which was a bad thing, but now it is a good thing. So emotions fill the words with divine frenzy, and it is just because of this fact, it is because of his favoring the emotions over the ideas, that he considers Iliad to be greater than the Odyssey or Odyssey. Both the works are from Homer. Okay, so generally Odyssey is considered to be a greater work than Iliad. So, but he considers Iliad to be greater just because it is full of strong emotions, and emotions are properly put in that particular work. Now, the third one is appropriate use of figures of speech, and it is the first artistic source, okay, which is not natural. And you must also remember that nearly one third of the treatise that is called Longinus of Sublime on Sublime is filled with his remarks on appropriate use of figure of speech. And the most important thing that you need to remember is that he does not consider figures of speech to be an unnatural thing. Means it is very natural for a writer or a poet to use figures of speech in a poem. Okay, and they are not just a kind of ornament. Okay, अगर वो ornament होंगे तो मतलब फिर सिर्फ decoration के लिए हैं, वो soul नहीं है. But he considers them to be a part of the soul of the work. Now, very important thing, I haven't found it in any book though, but when I was reading it, it reminded me of the Russian formalism. He says that they introduce the element of surprise in a work by introducing the element of strangeness. Now, we are going to have a look at Russian formalism in the days to come, and then you will be reminded of Longinus, because Russian formalism also says that the strangeness, this quality of strangeness, is the main thing that contributes towards the defamiliarization. Okay, and this defamiliarization is the thing that makes literature literary. Okay, and this is the basic difference between the ordinary day-to-day language and the language of literature. So you'll have to wait for Russian formalism then. So he says that figures of speech create a kind of strangeness in the work of art, and this creates, or this produces an element of surprise. Yeah, there is a limitation to figures of speech. He says a figure of speech is effective only if it appears in disguise, or when it is shaded by the brilliance of the writer. Means if somebody is using figures of speech just for the sake of figures of speech, it is not going to be a good thing, and these figures of speech are not going to produce any positive effect on the reader. So the figures of speech should be disguised or shaded by the brilliance of the writer. मतलब ऐसे इनको यूज करना है, दिखाने के लिए यूज नहीं करना है कि मैं figures of speech यूज कर रहा हूँ. इस तरह से यूज करना है कि बस ये ध्यान में ना आए कि वो figure of speech है, बट जो इफेक्ट वो प्रोड्यूस करना चाहते हैं figures of speech, उस इफेक्ट पे ही ध्यान जाए सिर्फ, तभी वो figures of speech जो हैं वो क्या होंगे, सक्सेसफुल होंगे. Now, the chief figures of speech that should be used in a work according to him are rhetorical question, very common. Rhetorical question is one not to have an answer, which is supposed not to have an answer. Generally, when we say "Are you crazy?" So this is not put to have an answer. We are not expecting an answer that the listener would tell us that either he is crazy or not. This is just for the sake of emphasis that we say "Are you crazy?" हिंदी में भी बोलते हैं पागल है क्या, बेवकूफ है क्या, गधा है क्या. So these are not actually questions. They just have the structure of a question. So they are called rhetorical question because they contribute to the rhetorics, or they contribute to the effect they create. Second one is asyndeton. Asyndeton is a kind of figure of speech where the writer omits several conjunctions or several words which are otherwise necessary for a sentence grammatically, like I came, I saw, I conquered. In this sentence, we have omitted and. So assent written is a kind of omission of conjunctions generally, although we can go into detail and say see a lot of many other things in that as well, but for the time being we are just concerned with Longinus, so I'm not going to go into detail here. The third one is hyperbaton. Hyperbaton is a kind of circumlocutory way of saying things. Okay, I'm sorry, hyperbaton is not a circumlocutory way. Hyperbaton is the inversion of the normal word order. Okay, means if we talk grammatically, if I say I want to see you, and I say want I just to see you, or sorry, we're back again. If you want to say I must see this, and instead of saying I must see this, I say must I see this, or see this I must. So this is the normal, this is the reversal of the normal order of the words, inversion actually of the normal order of the words. In grammatical terms we call it inversion. So hyperbaton is a kind of inversion, and periphrasis is a circumlocutory way of, or roundabout way of talking or saying things. Okay, means if I want to say I go and I say I'm going to, if I want to say I will and I say I'm going to, so this is घुमा फिरा के बोलना. And there are plenty of other ways, plenty of other examples that we can see. Instead of calling someone a prostitute, we say the lady of the night. And हिंदी में भी हम बोलते हैं कि सूरदास बोलते हैं अंधे को. और there are many more examples, but you must remember, इनको हम बाद में देख सकते हैं. You must remember what are the chief figures of speech according to him. These are 4 chief figures of speech: rhetorical question, assent written, hyperbaton, and periphrasis, which are good to be used in a literary work. The next one and the fourth one is nobility of diction, and in this he says that the words should be chosen properly, and he advocates the use of metaphors here and ornamented language also. So the use of metaphor, the proper choice of words, and ornamented language comes under nobility of diction. He also says that when the words are suitable, they have a moving effect upon the reader. Suitable word. What does he mean by suitable words? When Horace says that the language should be chosen according to the situation, he is actually paving way for Longinus, because Longinus also follows Horace in the proper use of language at particular occasion. He says that when the object is trivial, to invest it with the grand and stately words would have the same effect as putting a full-sized magic mask on the head of a little child. Very good example, and you must also remember this, because these are the I cannot say original words because original words are in Greek, but this is the translation of those original words. And as far as the figures of speech or considered for ornament, he says metaphor and hyperbole are chief ornaments of speech. They should be used in making the diction noble. So नोबेलिटी ऑफ डिक्शन में अगर अपन बात करें हिंदी में, तो प्रॉपर लैंग्वेज यूज करनी है और ओकेजन के हिसाब से. वही सेम बात जो होरेस ने बोली थी कि अगर आप भिखारी को राजा की और राजा को भिखारी की लैंग्वेज बुलाओगे तो अच्छा नहीं लगेगा. वैसा ही लगेगा ठीक जैसा कि एक छोटे बच्चे के सिर पे आपने बहुत ही बड़ा ट्रेजिक मास्क बना दिया हो, है ना. और जहां तक बात है कि कौन कौन से फिगर्स ऑफ स्पीच यूज कर सकते हैं अपन इसमें, वो है मेटाफोर और हाइपरबोली. आप पहले याद रखिएगा, पहले भी इसने हमें फिगर्स ऑफ स्पीच बताए हैं, परंतु सिर्फ फिगर्स ऑफ स्पीच हेडिंग के अंदर हैं. लेकिन यहाँ पर नोबेलिटी ऑफ डिक्शन में वो डिक्शन को अच्छा बनाने के लिए मेटाफोर और हाइपरबोली को यूज करने की सलाह देता है. The last one is dignity of composition. Dignity of composition is nothing more than the perfect combination of the previous four elements of the sublime. If one is able to harmoniously blend those four elements in his work, sublime is guaranteed to be achieved. Okay, such a composition has not only a natural power of persuasion and giving pleasure, but also the marvelous power of exalting the soul and swaying the heart of man. Means if somebody is able to use those four elements in a harmonious whole, the work is guaranteed to transport a reader into the world of writer, and the work will definitely achieve sublimity. And that was all in today's lecture on Longinus. And please subscribe to my channel. It will not cost you anything, but it will motivate me to make more videos for you. Thank you very much.